Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to A Defining Moment for Civility, a forum with four governors. My name is Rebecca Warren, and many of you know me from my 14 years of legislative service in the Michigan House and Senate. Thank you for joining us for what promises to be an important and timely conversation. My colleague Tanya Shootmaker, also a 14-year veteran of the Michigan legislature, and I represent an organization called Michiganders for Civic Resilience, a partnership between the Carter Center and the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Foundation. Along with several outstanding organizations, our work is part of the broader Michigan Civility Coalition, a bipartisan, cross-sector effort committed to strengthening how we engage with one another in public life. Before we begin, we would like to recognize a few of the individuals whose leadership makes this work possible. Joining us today from the Carter Center, we are happy to have our colleagues Dan Grant, Tochi Ezkanowa, Sira Zaidi, and our state coordinator from Michiganders for Civic Resilience, Julia Pulver. Thank you, Julia, for all the work you did to make sure everyone had the details they needed today. And from the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Foundation, we are grateful to have Jeff Paulette and Don Cooper with us today. We are thankful for their partnership and commitment to civility. And we are deeply honored to be joined today by the four living former governors of the great state of Michigan, each of whom have led Michigan through pivotal moments. Governors, your willingness to come together sends a powerful signal that leadership grounded in respect and service transcends party, ideology, and time in office. At its core, the Michigan Civility Coalition is about affirming a shared set of principles that is needed now more than ever. Presuming goodwill in one another, showing and sharing respect, leading with humility, listening with openness, and communicating clearly, respectfully, and truthfully. These principles are simple, but they are essential to a healthy democracy.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you all for being here today. The Michigan Civility Coalition brings together organizations with diverse perspectives but a shared commitment to civility, including founding members, the Michiganders for Civic Resilience, the Oakland University Center for Civic Engagement, the Democracy Defense Project, and the Mackinac Center for Public Policy. Together, these partners reflect belief that how we engage matters just as much as the policies debate. So let's give our partners a big round of applause. Michiganders for Civic Resilience, which is what Rebecca and I are proud to be rooted in the legacies of two remarkable institutions, the Carter Center, founded by President Jimmy Carter and First Lady Rosalind Carter, has long advanced peace, democracy, and human rights around the world, and the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Foundation carries forward President Ford's conviction that honesty, decency, and respect are not optional in public service, they are essential. The reality is that most Michiganders and most Americans are exhausted by the toxic tone of politics today. They want leaders who can disagree without being disagreeable, kind of like Rebecca and I, who assume good intentions and who listen with respect. Returning to these basic principles is critical if we are serious about bridging divides and strengthening trust. Politics today requires all of us, individuals, organizations, and institutions who want a more civil, more respectful, and less hostile public square to come together and lead by example. That is what today represents. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your leadership, and we look forward to a thoughtful and meaningful discussion. It is my pleasure to introduce former House Democratic leader and Senator Diane Byram. Diane is founding partner of Byram Fisk Advocacy Communications, which, along with Harbor Strategic Public Affairs, led by John Selleck, who unfortunately got really sick this morning, is part of the Democracy Defense Project here in Michigan. Diane, take it away.
Thank you, Tanya and Rebecca. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this historic event. I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and a special thank you to the Carter Center, Michiganders for Civic Resilience, Oakland University, Center for Civic Engagement, the Mackinac Center, and the Gerald R. Ford Presidential Foundation for organizing this event. On behalf of the organizers, I want to thank our 4 former governors for taking time out of their schedules to discuss the importance of civility and respect. We don't often get 4 former governors of the great state of Michigan together, so this must be a historic occasion. My name is Diane Byram, and I am the founding partner of Byram and Fisk Advocacy Communications. For the past 2 years, we've worked with the bipartisan Democracy Defense Project, one of the co-organizers of today's event, and our 2 Michigan Democracy Defense Project co-chairs, Governors Jim Blanchard and John Engler. Our other 2 co-chairs are Lieutenant Governor John Cherry and Congressman Mike Bishop. The Democracy Defense Project has been traveling across the state, talking to Michiganders about the safety, security, and integrity of Michigan's election system and the trust and confidence they have in the way we conduct our elections. We're excited to be part of today's effort to build a Michigan Civility Coalition so we can bring people together at this time of rising political division. I'm excited that we can do that in partnership with Governor Jennifer Granholm and Governor Rick Snyder. I've had the honor and privilege to work directly with Governors Blanchard, Engler, and Granholm when I served in the legislature. Now to introduce the governors. Governor Blanchard is a Democrat who served as Michigan's 45th governor from 1983 to 1991. Governor Blanchard is currently senior counsel with the global law firm DLA Piper, co-chair of the executive committee of the Canada-U.S. Law Institute, president of the National Archives Foundation, and a board member of the International Spy Museum, among others. Governor Engler is a Republican who served as Michigan's 46th governor from 1991 to 2003. More recently, Governor Engler served as the interim president at Michigan State University. And before that, he was president of the Business Roundtable, which is an association of chief executive officers from leading U.S. corporations. Governor Granholm is a Democrat who served as Michigan's 47th governor from 2003 until 2011. Governor Granholm also recently served as the United States Energy Secretary under the Biden administration and is currently a senior counselor at DGA Group and remains active and engaged in the clean energy issue space. And Governor Snyder, he's a Republican who served as Michigan's 48th governor from 2011 until 2019. In 2022, Governor Snyder co-founded and became CEO of Sensei, based in Ann Arbor, which provides solutions for companies to better protect themselves from cyber attacks. And with that, I am going to welcome our bipartisan panel of former Michigan governors to the stage for our panel. Thank you.
A little hard here. Let me take your hand here, just by one knee. Thanks, Aiden.
Okay.
Pictures again, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, governors, please have a seat. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon, everybody. That was terrible. That was worse than a room full of college freshmen. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. My name's Dave Dulio. I'm the director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Oakland University. We appreciate you being here today for this historic event. Thank you to the governors. Thank you to the co-sponsors. I have the privilege of introducing our moderator for today. For those that don't know, Roop Raj from Channel 2 in Detroit anchors the 5, 6, and 11 p.m. newscasts, and he has Detroit's only daily, nightly political talk show. It's called The Pulse. And Roop, with the crowd here today, you could book out the show for the next year. So we'll look forward to seeing you all on Roop's show. Roop Raj, everybody, thank you.
Thanks for warming everybody up. You know, after you eat a little lunch, you gotta, right? But we're gonna wake everybody up because we have an amazing program. When we say historic, that's not just hyperbole. This is truly an historic moment. You take a look at the stage over here. You are witnessing history. And by the way, not just in the state of Michigan, but across this country, how often is it that you see 4 governors of a great state like Michigan sitting shoulder to shoulder, 3 of them in person, and Governor Granholm via Zoom all together. So please do us a very warm Lansing welcome and actually put your hands together once again for the 4 governors of the great state of Michigan, Governor Engler, Governor Blanchard, Governor Snyder, and Governor Granholm. Yeah, please stand. What a tremendous honor to be here today with all of you. My friends, I got to tell you, the reason that applause is so heartwarming is because of the fact that we have a crisis on our hands in our country. And the crisis is not a Republican one. It's not a Democratic one. It's not an independent one. It's a uniquely American crisis where we can't put our hands together for somebody who perhaps we think differently about certain issues with. And that is a crisis. And it's a crisis of communication. It's a crisis of character. And if we don't solve it together, we're not going to move any further. It's not up to the politicians who are currently serving or the ones who served before in front of you. It's up to each and every one of you to take civility and decency. And we hope today, out of this conversation, you'll perhaps be inspired to bring a piece of that to the dinner table and perhaps onto your Twitter feed, because God knows that's a cesspool. I do want to begin by opening up with each of our governors having a chance to say a few words. Asking a politician to keep their comments to 2 minutes is going to break a Guinness Book of World Records here today, because they are such people of integrity who have great experience and have a lot to say. But I want to remind our great governors, we're going to have plenty of time. But if you just begin with a 2-minute statement, we'll begin with Governor Granholm. Governor, it's so good to see you. Thank you for joining us here today. Do tell us where you think we stand right now when it comes to civility in a couple minutes.
Great. Thank you so much, Roop. And to my fellow governors, I really want to thank the Michigan Civility Coalition for hosting. Please forgive my appearance via video. Thank you so much for arranging to make it happen. And I'm super grateful because I've been guilty of internally raging at our president for what I see as his divisiveness, anger bubbles up inside me. It's not good for my constitution or our big C constitution. So I am eager to soothe my own raging beast by having a civil conversation with 3 governors who know the importance of respect and bipartisanship, even as we may disagree about the president. I respect all 3 of you immensely, and I'm grateful to share this moment with you. And, in these times, I just think it's important to remind ourselves that, as John F. Kennedy said once, we all breathe the same air. We all inhabit this small planet. And as we all know, separate, we're all awed by the sunsets over Lake Michigan and the joy for some of us of our grandchildren's, small fingers in our hands. And importantly, we all love our country. We're not naive about the fraught times we're in, but the fact that we all love our country and our state is a good place to start. Thanks.
Put your hands together for Governor Granholm. Absolutely beautiful remarks. Governor Rick Snyder, you when you ran and you led, you did it with positive, relentless energy, right? And that's something that we know that you'll probably want to echo here on the stage today.
Well, thanks, Roop. And it's, again, what a group to be with. This is incredible. What an honor. And I want to thank the groups that put this on. We've been on a downward slope for over a decade, in my view. When I was governor, I would often include in virtually every talk I gave comments along these lines, which I still believe today. What's the greatest threat to America? We have huge threats. You can argue about North Korea. You can argue about Russia, Iran, The greatest threat to America, in my view, is us. And that's our lack of ability to get along with one another. That's our greatest threat, and we need to do something about it. It can't be something passive. We have to be proactive. And I often make the comment to people, fighting. We need to stop fighting. Fighting had a role on the beaches in Normandy, not the beaches of Lake Michigan.
It's a good line.
It is. Thank you. And my answer to it is something you've all heard, but I will reiterate, because I do believe in it. It's part of my essence, is relentless positive action. And what is that? That's a philosophy to say if you're going to operate in the political world or in any world, no blame, no credit, what's the problem, what's the solution, and be relentless in pursuit of positive solutions. That's what we need to move towards. That is the best path for us going forward versus the broken system we have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Rick Snyder, ladies and gentlemen.
Very good.
Thank you.
Governor Jim Blanchard. Governor, you've worked with Republicans and Democrats your whole career and done it well.
Yes, first I want to acknowledge my partner and wife, Janet Blanchard, is here.
Yay.
So, and secondly, I want to mention that, because I've never had a chance to do this, that Bruce Timmons is here. He and I were pals from the 2nd grade through the 8th grade. He's here. He's the oldest person I know, a friend in this room. and by the way, he's been a Republican all these years, but he worked bipartisan in the legislature for a long time. You probably know Bruce, John.
Bruce, very well.
Other than, I have a lot to say, and I can't do it in 2 minutes. People who know me know that. But first, I want to thank your parents and grandparents for having voted for me. Thank you very much. Secondly, I had a chance to, these are abnormal times. All of us understand that, but we're not naive. By the way, you guys are part of the solution, not part of the problem in terms of civility and respect and honor. So thank you for being here and understanding and caring. I served with 7 presidents. I went to Congress 52 years ago, Roop. You weren't even born. I went to Congress, and I worked with 7 presidents over that time frame. I never would have thought we would have to have a forum like this. In fact, if it was 2015, we wouldn't be hosting a forum on civility. We had it. We had it. Didn't ever think that we would have people with assault weapons on the Capitol lawn here in Lansing either. I hope all of this has been an aberration. It is abnormal times. I must say this. I have worked with the other 3 governors here. With John Engler when he was Senate leader, we did a lot. We worked at fellow Spartans along with Diane Byram. We cared deeply about our alma mater. We're now co-chairs of the Democracy Defense Project, underscoring the importance of Michigan elections and the fairness and accuracy of them. With Jennifer Granholm, we worked together on her Financial Crisis Council. We worked on campaigns for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, the Gordie Howe Bridge. And Rick Snyder, I worked for 8 years with him, and I thank you for your leadership on the Gordie Howe Bridge. So you need to know we are friends and we get along, and we might not agree on stuff. I'm sure we don't agree on everything. But it's important for you to understand that and know that we're committed to working together in the future like we hope all of you will do.
Thank you, Governor Blanchard. Governor John Engler, the first governor I ever interviewed, I mentioned this to him earlier, in 1996. I was running up the state capitol steps as a 19-year-old reporter right at WLNS, and my tripod broke, and he looked at me and said, "You need better equipment." And I said, "We got to fix the damn roads." No, I didn't say that. But Governor Engler, we thank you for your time. Thanks for being with us here today. Please do give us your opening remarks.
Well, listen, I'm, first of all, delighted to be part of this. I think this is historic. It's the first time the 3 of us have been together in person and at a program like this. And Jennifer zooming in. So we've got something that hasn't happened before, the 4 of us actually on the same stage, more or less. And we're here because of this topic is really important, and I think we're at a time. And we've had lots of challenges in the past. We've got lots of challenges that we're going to face in the future. It is a little bit different now. Jim talks about being abnormal. It is, I suppose. Although in '91, I remember being hung from a tree in the front of the Capitol yard. So that was a little different then. But we get through all of that stuff, and we've managed to have a way of talking through and working through. Jim and I were talking about this earlier. We always got budgets passed, different parties. We've always been part of lots of conversations where, at the end of the day, you did your work. I thought I'd just open and close with, since we're talking about civility, there's a civility compass. I'm on the Ford board, and we're one of the sponsors of the Gerald Ford Foundation, and we talk a lot about Gerald Ford integrity at the helm and what that means and what his example was of serving as a humble servant. But you've got the Carter Center is, long noted for some of the work that it has done. The Reagan Library has what they call a civility compass, and they have charting the course for common ground. It's on their website. Excellent for our discussion today. They mentioned really several key concepts: embrace human dignity, practice deep listening, identify key interests, honor complexity, ground arguments in factual evidence, acknowledge context, show courageous openness, stay connected. That's part of our conversation today. How we do those attributes, which I think lead to being able to have a dialogue. And that's what this is about. I'm a strong believer still in federalism. There's 50 states. It isn't all one size fits all. There's 50 different states. Within those states, there's also lots of different communities. And in those communities and in those states, lots of different approaches to all this. Many of them are useful examples for what we're talking about today. Some not as helpful, but that's what our discussion is about, how to make it better everywhere. Thank you.
Put your hands together for Governor John Engler. We're going to go through and talk about a lot of issues here today in the time that we have, from Minneapolis to ICE to decency, civility, and everything in between. But the elephant in the room, as someone who's a moderator in the media, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, at least for a minute, what it is that we're doing. People think that every other industry is evolving and the media is just sitting here like a dinosaur. We understand and realize that public trust, according to the Pew Institute and national media, is only at 28%. Public trust in mass media is at 28%. The same study, though, shows that trust in local media stands at 70%. It's not lost on me that the same is true for polling that shows that most people trust their local lawmakers more than they do their federal lawmakers, about at the same rate, 70-30. And so we understand at Fox 2, and by the way, I will speak for my colleagues at 4 and 7. You want to talk about civility? I believe that my colleagues at Channel 4 and 7 are doing very much, at least trying to do the same thing that we're doing, which is to be fair, but understanding the difference between fairness and balance is critical when you're watching the news. I host a nightly political talk show where we hold to account Republican leadership, and people say you're biased because you're picking on Donald Trump and the president and the Senate and the Congress. And I said, when you have a president who's ruling by way of executive order more than any other president in recent history, and you have a Senate and a Congress that are Republican and a Supreme Court in which the majority curries the favor of the president, you better damn well believe that we're holding to account the leaders that are actively in office that are in charge. And you may argue, well, that's not balanced. Well, I'm not going to spend a half hour after I spent a half hour talking about President Trump and the Senate and the Congress and the Supreme Court, now go spend a half hour on the lame duck part of the Congress that is passing bipartisan legislation to help fix the roads. That is balance. Fairness is about facts, and we're going to honor it each and every day. But I also understand that 70% trust can't be eroded anymore. We shoulder the responsibility of getting it wrong, and we'll do it every day. But at the same time, we ask you, each and every one of you, to remember that civility is not up to politicians and the media alone. It's up to you. And I think we can all put our hands together for ourselves as great Americans to hold that responsibility up as high as we expect our neighbors to. Yes? All right. Well, that being said, let's get right to Governor Granholm. First question. There are rules of engagement, Governor Granholm, in any fight. If you're a boxer, you have rules. If you're a wrestler, you got rules. If you're playing basketball or football, you got rules. The rules of engagement in politics used to be that we're going to have restraint from personal attacks that go extreme, and and we're going to set aside preconceived notions and move forward. Do you believe that there's a way forward getting back to those rules?
I sure hope so. My mom and dad were Republicans, and personally, I long for the days where there was an agreement about certain things. And there's this Venn diagram where we all should be. Part of the rules is that we agree that there's places where we can agree. We all agree we want efficient government, right? We all want good roads. We all want public safety. We all want investment in education with high standards and affordable health care and preserving our state parks and the Great Lakes. It's not hard, I think, to find that part of the Venn diagram that we can all agree on. But, part of the challenge, I think, is that on the presidential level anyway, when candidates campaign in maybe 7 states and they don't hear how other people in small towns, and whether it's Oklahoma or Oregon, when they don't hear how they think, it creates these silos, and it's easy to vilify people when you don't see them. So I know we're going to talk about this, but I think that this algorithmic slicing, the siloing of people on social media is a big culprit, and people aren't swimming in the same pond at all. Their realities, their facts are completely different because their sources are completely different. Content creators who are extreme are rewarded because extremism is more interesting and gets a greater number of clicks, and therefore their followers and their income, grows. Those incentives, to me, are greater for partisanship than they are for civility and unity, and because outrage gets clicks. So efforts like this should be part of the rules, is that everybody engages in conversations that are focused on civility, insisting on civility. It allows us to build a community committed to those 5 principles that were laid out before. But what I will say this, what I hope folks don't come away from with this effort is that we are not in denial, and we're not sort of civility washing the actions of a president who, for many, is not any of the values, does not demonstrate the values that you talk about, like presuming goodwill or showing respect or leading with humility, et cetera, and communicating truthfully. For many people, that is not what is evident. So I think we can be strong and united in condemning behavior that poisons democracy. And since we have a Republican president, it will take more courage for lifelong Republicans to speak up. And I don't know even where Governors Engler or Snyder stand on President Trump, but I am personally really grateful that you are here and speaking out on this.
Governor Snyder, right to you. I want to ask you this, that kind of leading to what Governor Granholm talked about, is why would you suppose that it's so much harder now than ever before for people of one party to walk away for a moment and say, I agree with these 5 things, but these 2 things, not so much? There seems to be a religious fervor behind politics that I don't remember being there before.
Yeah, to put it in context, I step back a second when I look at all this. And I'm a proud nerd, but this isn't rocket science. Look at the rest of your life and ask yourself the question, the way you see behavior in politics, would it be acceptable in any other part of your life? Would it be acceptable at the workplace? Would it be acceptable at your family dinner table? And I believe we can't control what everyone else does, but we can control ourselves. So the role model I've always had is I've tried to treat anyone in the political world just as if they had been a family member sitting at my dining room table. Isn't that what we need to do? And don't we need to stand up against all the perverse, the messed up, the weird view of this political world? It's not right. And bring the values that we have otherwise in the rest of our lives back to this. And it's about building trust. And it's about having win-wins versus win-loses. In politics, it has become an absolute win-lose sport. Think about that for a minute. When you have a win-win, everyone benefits, and you want to work with them again, and you want to have a win-win again. You're building a relationship. What happens when you have a win-lose? You have a transaction, because it's not rational for someone that's the loser to keep on working with the person that won, particularly if they win all the time. So instead of just talking about politics all the time, let's talk about how we can bring our lives the better parts of our lives and bring that to the political world to say, knock it off. Let's behave like we should and follow the golden rule. We should treat other people like we would like to be treated.
Governor Blanchard, I saw you waving your head up and down. Thank you, Governor Snyder. Governor Blanchard, when I heard Governor Granholm talking about the algorithm and big tech, I always say, if you want to know who's controlling your country, look at the first 4 rows of an inauguration. Those are the people who are in charge. And big tech has been a big part of a lot of what we're looking at. The big tech has divided us. And the algorithm says that Blanchard and Engler should disagree so much that we fight in order and that acrimony makes money, right? You're concerned about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I was running for Congress 52 years ago, my campaign manager said, remember, the press loves a good fight. And boring doesn't get the coverage. I want to associate myself with your remarks, Rick, and Jennifer as well. I agree with what you've said. I do want to point out, we got a lot of, first of all, it doesn't have to be the way it is today in American society. It doesn't. And the tone at the top has a lot to do with the issues that we're dealing with. I do want to mention, though, and I think you agree, that, yes, social media and the internet are real problems because people can lie, and get away with it. There's no scrutiny on that usually. There are algorithms, so people are being told what conspiracies tell them they want to do. But as I mentioned to Roop, Fox News nationwide has created an alternate universe here. Anyone who watches that would have nothing good to say about a Democrat. Now, Roop, fortunately, is the local Fox, and you do your own thing. Yeah. And I think that's important. Otherwise, I would not agree to have a Fox narrator to a panel like this because I tune them in, and it's a different world. It's crazy. And we have a problem with cable news, both sides. I think probably it's going to be difficult. We may have to return to the old FCC fairness doctrine, which is when you air opinions, you've got to give the other side the opportunity. I availed myself of that when I was in Congress, actually, and got equal time on a radio show that my opponent had because he was the incumbent. We're going to have to look at things like that. I don't know how you regulate the internet or social media. I wish I knew, but we talk about it all the time, John Engler and I. I mean, so this is a real problem. So many people don't know what to believe. They don't know where they can get the truth. Now, if everybody read newspapers, frankly, regardless of who the publisher was, I wouldn't worry so much. But young people don't even read newspapers. We were telling some friends, you got to wear a mask. You could catch this COVID. It was like, well, we don't know who to believe. We don't know who to believe. A couple million people died in this country because we had people out there saying it was a hoax. I mean, this is a much more serious issue for our democracy and really good government than I think we admit. And I think the 4 of us could agree that we believe in American exceptionalism, but I think we're going to lose it if we don't find ways to deal with these issues. As I said earlier, you guys are part of the solution, not part of the problem. But I'm really worried about the young generation thinking what's going on is normal and appropriate. And it is not normal and appropriate.
Thank you, Governor Blanchard. Governor Engler, you and I and the other governors were talking last week in preparation for today's event about how there was a time that people picked up the Wall Street Journal, read the editorial, picked up the New York Times, read the editorial, and looked at the two sides without burning the newspaper in their front yard because they were mad. And it seems as though, again, we've lost that in our phones. Is there a way out? And do you believe the divide is more exaggerated because our noses are dug so deep in our phone?
Well, let's do a little survey. How many subscribe to a daily newspaper in this room? See, that is barely half.
Yeah.
In this room. This has got to be one of the most sophisticated audiences you've ever gathered together. And you're about half. That's pretty scary. There was a survey done by, again, this was out of the Reagan Institute, but you get regular news from following social media platforms. Facebook, 43, this was last year. YouTube, 41. Instagram, 27. TikTok, 23. So on. I mean, Jim's point on social media is it's a real problem because not only is there no check on truthfulness, often it's anonymous. I mean, you have people that say things there. They can say whatever they want, and you don't know who said it. And you talk about feeding conspiracy theories on either the right or left, I would say, Brett Baer recently on Fox, for example, has been doing a segment where he takes a Republican and a Democrat, and trying to find common ground. There's some of the hosts that go too far, but I sure say at MSNBC and The View and CNN, you got just as many examples going the other direction. So I don't think anybody's hands are clean on that. I do think it's the shift to social media that's really exacerbated and put the accelerant, if you will, on the flames of division in the country. How do you push back against that? I do think there's a responsibility on the part of the media, and I do appreciate the distinction with local news versus national news, because I would be interested. We won't do this question, but I'll bet there's very few that watch a national news broadcast here. I just don't think that happens anymore. They might watch, the local. I think we're going to have to change our attitude toward how we cover politics. One of the proposals that Rupert and I talked a little bit about, I think, for example, let's take Michigan. We have, for the first time in modern political history, an open governor's seat and an open U.S. Senate seat. I believe, since there's going to be tens of millions of dollars spent on television in this state, that those networks have an obligation to the people of Michigan to get together now, pick a date for a debate in August right after the primary, pick another date, a second date for another debate right after Labor Day, before we start voting. Not say, well, I can't decide on a debate because Roop wants to host it and Rick Alpin in Grand Rapids wants to host it. We can't agree on the moderator. Let the candidates pick the moderators, but do something to get these candidates for office after the primaries on television, having debates in statewide broadcasts that everybody watches or has at least the opportunity to watch. And the media owes that for the millions of dollars of revenue they're going to have. They owe an hour or two to the people of Michigan to put these programs together. That's their obligation. That would help. That would help.
And just so you know, we are, and I probably shouldn't say it, we are working right now to try to get a couple debates on television. And yes, you're right. We don't make money off debates. We do it because we have an obligation to make sure we get it done. We're hoping to do that with the Senate and the governor's race as well.
Let's get hope back. Isn't the strategy. Set the debates and telling the candidates when they are. You tell the candidates now that these are the debate dates.
No,
nobody's got a schedule that's blocked out August or September. No candidate. I'm telling you that as a former candidate. Nobody's got it scheduled. You get the agreement. You do your job, and the candidates will be there. And if they don't come, the empty chair is there, and you humiliate the person who doesn't show up.
No, you're right.
But you've got the job to do. It's not on them. It's on you.
You're absolutely right. And a lot of these candidates, they want to take to social media and say, I don't want to talk to the press. I'll just do my message over here. There was actually a recent case where a very high up person in Michigan said, we would love to have you here for this ceremonial event. And I said, will there be questions? And the person said, no questions. This is not state-run media where we're going to come kiss the ring of the leader and watch them do something and walk away. So questions have to be available. I want to get to Governor Granholm and talk about negative campaigning. We're in the midst, as you just heard, obviously, of the Senate and the governor's race and others as well. Governor Granholm, I mean, we're saying all the right things. We want civility, we want decency. But then when we look at numbers, we look at how well people do with negative campaigning over the course of 40 years, 50 years, and it shows that people pay attention. How do you balance civility, decency, and being strong in your message, campaigning?
Yeah, it's thank you. I mean, it's obviously so hard because all the research shows, the polling shows that negative campaigning still works. And there's today, I think there's a different kind of negative ad than before. And I'm not even talking about, the use of AI and deep fakes. Actually, people are learning that the most effective ads, because there's such huge cynicism out there about political ads, the most effective ads are not scripted and they use real people rather than politicians. So the real people negative ads using folks from a particular state or folks who maybe look like your neighbor are the ones that are the most powerful. And the over-the-top negative ads can backfire if people think they're not true. It used to be that people believed that what was on TV, the TV stations, they wouldn't air it if it were truthful. People thought that. And now everybody suspects everything. I mean, suspicion is healthy in an era of deep fakes and AI. I wish it weren't true, but negative campaigning, man, It's as old as time. It's not going away. But I do believe that there is a strand of the electorate that longs for, as Governor Snyder would say, relentless positive action, that longs for something else. And boy, I hope the candidates in this election, while they can certainly stand up and fight on principle for policies, that it doesn't get personal and it doesn't get over the top ridiculous, because it just contributes to cynicism and the disintegration of democracy.
Governor Snyder, do positive messages work even if they're the right thing to do?
Oh, it worked twice. Because you know where I am on this. I just think they're bad. And the real answer for a negative ad is just tune it out. Why would you listen to it? Is it going to make your life better listening to it? And what's the benefit of a positive ad or a positive message? And I'm still mentoring candidates. I'm out there helping people in the last cycle. I'm going to help people in this cycle. And before I help someone, I ask them one question. I said, I'm interested in helping you if you tell me you're going to have a positive agenda. If you're not going to have a positive agenda, I'm moving on. And isn't that the approach we should be taking? If you look at the election cycle coming up, do I want someone running for the Michigan House or the Senate to be talking about what's going on in Washington and the mess? Do you think there's going to be any positive discussion about what's going on in Washington for someone running for state office? I doubt it. What I want to hear is them talking about a brighter future for Michigan. What can be done, how we can work together, how we can make our educational system better, how we can do so many different things to do better work. How can we help with affordability, have more jobs, grow Michigan faster? That's the kind of message that I believe the average Michigander is going to react to in a positive way. And that's what people should get excited for to go vote for. How can you get excited to go vote for something negative where people are just tearing someone down? It's not right. And the key metric there is they are going to come, they are going to run those ads. The one place, the one gate that has ultimate say, though, is do you listen to them or not? Or do you decide, I've got my ears open for the positive message. Those are the candidates I'm going to spend my time on, regardless of their party. I'm going to listen to them if they're talking about something positive.
Governor Blanchard, I want to ask you a little bit about the situation in Minnesota. How do you, with civility and decency, move forward with your Republican friends, neighbors, colleagues, and have a conversation about the way things are going there right now? If someone disagrees with masking of agents, and you believe that the mask should come off, and you have a discussion with that, how do you maintain decency and civility and try to move forward?
Well, I'd be working at it if I was there. I lived in Minneapolis for 3 years in law school, so I'd never lived in a big city that was more safe and more civilized. And so it's hard for me to watch people demonize the Minnesotans, really is. I'm not there. I'm glad that Tom Homan went in there and is trying to tone down the dialogue, and he's pulling out 700 ICE agents. But I also want to tell you something that you probably don't know. During Barack Obama's administration, he deported more people than any president in history. 3.1 million people were deported, and that doesn't count people who self-deported or people who were turned away at the border. And there were no masks, there were no cheap theatrics, people weren't being thrown down on, I don't even think they were wearing military uniforms. They weren't being thrown down on the pavement and handcuffed. None of that was going on. But the immigrant community was very unhappy with Barack Obama. They called him deporter-in-chief. So that's an example of the fact that things don't have to be the way they are. They can change. That would be my message in dealing with ICE. They have no business wearing masks. They say, well, somebody will find out who they are and harass their family. Yeah, a National Guardsman from Texas is going to be uncovered in Chicago, and every law enforcement officer risks that, and they live in the community. So, but I want to switch subject just briefly. In terms of solutions, we're all agreeing on most of this. I would say this to all of you. Ask your kids and grandkids if they wouldn't like to help a candidate somewhere on a campaign. You learn so much. That's how I learned politics. and pick a candidate. Maybe it's a local race, maybe it's school board, maybe it's governor, whatever. Pick a candidate and go that you think you admire and work for them and learn about things. You know, if everybody here got one person to do that in these elections, it would personally be enlightening for them, and it would also be good for our society, because I think our responsibility, you've said it, and I know Jennifer believes it, and so does John. Our responsibility is to support good candidates who are worthy of public office and sort out the fools and the people who are into conspiracies. And I would say in those debates, by the way, which you should probably host one, no wise guy crackpot leading questions. Ask really good questions.
Sure.
Because, you know, as I said, voters love a good fight. The press loves a good fight. But to start out debates with crackpot questions often happens is just not enlightening.
I agree. Governor Engler, I want to ask you a little bit about the trust that we have in our institutions. We talk about the media. We talk about politicians. What about our elections? You know, I think it was the Democracy Defense Project.
Right.
They did 2 years of polls, and they essentially said in those 2 years that the overwhelming majority of Michigan residents for the 2024 election believed that the election was run with integrity. Obviously, that wasn't the case in 2020. How do we restore faith in that?
We just have more elections, because I think our Defending Democracy Project has pointed this out. And one of the things that Jim and I are proud of, along with Mike Bishop and John Cherry, as people learn more about what the controls are that are in place, their confidence goes up. I mean, that's, you know, does it to say that there's never been a mistake? I mean, we saw in Ann Arbor there was a mistake. We had somebody who wasn't a citizen voted. Now that person actually got caught. Hopefully he's, you know, facing whatever consequence. There are allegations that the non-voters are. We need to clean up the rolls. I think we all agree on that. That's not a partisan issue. Maybe there's not agreement on how that gets done, but for heaven's sakes, and there's complete agreement only citizens should vote, and there's complete agreement that people should only vote once. So that's just a matter of enforcing the law. And I think if people understand that is the law and it's going to be enforced, we're a long way down the road to security. The other thing that I believe is part of this, and certainly we thought 24 in Michigan, but 24 across the country, I mean, was pretty good. When you have a bad outcome, that doesn't mean the election process got rigged. It might mean your candidacy, you know, didn't get the job done, or the other candidate did something. There's lots of reasons why people win and lose elections. There's no question in the Republican Party, there's a lot of unhappiness going all the way back to after 2020, when the president who lost the election went to Georgia and screwed up 2 Senate seats that probably should never have been lost and have never been won back. Now, you don't go out and, you know, talk about that all the time, but I can tell you, there's plenty of unhappiness over that. And Jim's point on Minneapolis is you send Tom Homan and all of a sudden the conversation changes, and now what do we have? An agreement with the local officials, you know, that they're going to take somebody who's got a criminal record in the jail and turn them over. When President Obama was conducting programs, there weren't sanctuary cities. Nobody said, we're a sanctuary city, you can't come here. And there wasn't a lack of cooperation. Some of this, you know, in politics has gotten very performative, and this is sort of performative in the extreme. There, you know, we have paid organizers who organize these things. And we have a lot of people who I think legitimately have, as they should have, complaints about what they've seen and how actions are carried out. And this change of personnel in Minnesota brought the temperature down, got an agreement, and hopefully we'll be back to a little bit more normalcy.
Governor Granholm, I want you to be able to address the situation in Minneapolis as well. Do you find a glimmer of hope and perhaps a little bit of optimism in the fact that you have Tom Homan in there instead of Bovino? You have 700 troops being pulled back. You have cooperation with Jacob Fry and with the governor?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's obviously an important start. You know, there are still 2,000, you know, ICE or, you know, folks who believe are militarizing the streets on the ground. But, you know, you've got to start somewhere. Honestly, you know, if you want unity, I feel like the people of Minneapolis have been united against this invasion of their city. It's not I feel, you can see it on the hundreds of thousands of people out protesting. But I've really been inspired by the peaceful demonstrations of expression of those people who are telling the federal government they don't want their city taken over or militarized in some way. And those images, the power of citizen protest, of peaceful citizen protest, is one of the reasons I know that there was pressure for this pullback. And again, here, I mean, on immigration, I mean, this too is a Venn diagram of everybody agrees that we should be deporting violent criminals. Everybody agrees we need to secure the border. And after that, I think it's important that people agree what comprehensive immigration reform looks like. But it's easier to find common ground when folks are not pepper sprayed or shot in the streets. So I'm encouraged by this step. And I think citizens brought this about. And that gives me just an enormous amount of inspiration, honestly.
Governor Snyder, if you were in office as the governor of Minnesota during a time like this, as you reflect and watch what's unfolding, what would positive, relentless action look like in the midst of a crisis like this?
Well, again, I glad to see the progress going on that's happening today, and I hope that continues. Because the context I'd give you is, if you look at Minneapolis, that could be any place in Michigan. Minneapolis is a fabulous place. I appreciate Governor Blanchard bringing up his time spent there. I mean, it's a wonderful city with wonderful people. Think of Grand Rapids, think of other places in Michigan, and ask yourself the same question. If you would have had that many people showing up from the federal government, what would happen in any community, particularly in the Midwest? So it's good that people have now recognized the pendulum went too far, and now it's being pulled back. And the question is, let's keep on bringing it back, bring the temperature down, and still recognize we need to deal with illegal immigration, particularly of violent people. But again, you know me, I was always very pro-immigration for legal people to grow our country. That's what America is. So we do need comprehensive reform in the long run to do a better job in this country.
Governor Blanchard, as you know, the tone right now, obviously we talk about temperature. I'll tell you, I've been doing television for 30 years. I've never gotten so much mail telling me to go back to where I came from. I live in Rochester, and they're telling me to go back to Troy, I guess. But I like Rochester, and we don't want to go back. We're not going back. And I had someone last week correct me on a pronunciation and tell me that here in America we speak English. And I told him I'm struggling with the American language, but I thank you for your tutoring lessons here on social media. Your kindness does not go unnoted. There's the temperature, even when something is innocuous, the mere presence of a brown dude on TV saying something that I wasn't Newsmax or Fox News promoting President Trump, but instead making an issue of questions that all Americans have about the way things are going, and then go back to where you came from. Can we return, or is the toothpaste out of the tube?
Can we what?
Can we return back to civility, or is the toothpaste out of the tube? Are we done?
Well,
is this the new normal?
It doesn't have to be this way. I think there may have to be more incidents before the leadership brings us back to something more normal, which is still combative. It's not like it isn't. There's still going to be debates. But, let's get real again. Last week, Kash Patel sent the FBI into Georgia to grab ballot boxes or ballots to please a president who still thinks that in 2000 he carried Georgia. And he went on the phone. We've all heard the conversation asking him to manufacture votes. What are these people doing? They're just fanning the fires that the elections are not safe and secure and accurate. And he had his national intelligence director, Tulsi Gabbard, go in and supervise this. And what happened then the other day? The president says we should federalize elections, violating our Constitution. The elections are run by states. And I'm proud to say that along with Governor Engler and Congressman Mike Bishop and former Lieutenant Governor John Cherry, we put out a statement pushing back on that, reminding people elections are run by the states. And by the way, in Michigan, we have an outstanding system manned by 1,500 local clerks, supported by thousands of volunteers, your neighbors. And we're just going to have to push back.
One last question for each one of you, and then we got to get these folks back to work, even though they don't want to go. We're having much more fun here. I do want to go through, starting with Governor Engler, what can everyone here do to bolster civility in everyday life? Governor Engler, we'll begin with you and we'll go through a minute each. Go ahead.
Well, I think, Governor Snyder's given us some hints on that just with, family and friends. I do go back to, there's a debate about a lot of important topics in this country and those debates need to be held. I mean, Social Security is on the brink. When's that going to run bankrupt? We aren't fixing the healthcare system. There was mention of, Governor Granholm mentioned the comprehensive immigration reform. I remember John McCain as a candidate for president being for that issue. It helped kill him, and the bill got killed in the Senate, but that was something where the Bush administration and Senator Kennedy, Senator McCain were working on it, and Harry Reid and a couple of others killed it in the Senate because politically it was determined that was advantageous. And so keeping issues alive for election advantage is probably an uncivil thing too. We don't call it civility, but isn't that part of what we're dealing with? We need to be able to solve big problems. And I'll give one example that many will remember in this room, but Dick Posthumus, who was the Senate leader at the time, will remember this well. When we were trying to fix how we funded schools in Proposal A, there was no way to reach and Diane was there too, actually. Yeah, we could not reach the consensus between the parties. So what we ended up doing is saying, okay, your party write a plan, our party write a plan, and we'll give the people a choice. And we actually had to have Democrats vote for the Republican plan, Republicans vote for the Democrat plan. We put one in place and put the other on the ballot. And that was a compromise. It wasn't a resolution that we did in the legislature because we could not get agreement there. But when it went to the ballot and the people spoke, guess what? We didn't then start protesting because we didn't win or we implemented it then. And so being able to work through to get solutions to problems is a very civil thing to do. Using issues for political advantage is a very uncivil thing to do. We don't put that under civility, but it sure is a fundamental part of the problem because if we solve problems, that also restores confidence. It's the answer I said about elections. The more elections we have that are held properly, success begets success. And that's true whether it's holding elections or fixing an issue.
We have, there's about 4 minutes left. We'll give applause to all of them at the end. Governor Blanchard, go ahead. 1 more minute.
Well, when your favorite candidate compromises with the other party or nowadays takes the risk to co-sponsor a bill with the other party, don't get upset and start acting like they're selling out. In my career in Congress, I never would have got the Chrysler Rescue through, which catapulted me into the governor's office. But for the help of Stuart McKinney, Republican of Connecticut, and Tom Evans, Republican of Delaware, we would not have got the Michigan Education Trust through, the first in the nation tuition guarantee program, without finally getting the support of the state Senate. In fact, we made sure that Bill Cederberg, Republican state senator, got to name the program met. So I think when you're dealing with your friends, have a little patience with the fact. Ask them what Republicans they've worked with. When I asked you to, get your children and grandchildren to pick candidates, that's another thing they can ask.
And when the media has these debates, they can ask these questions.
And the media will have a debate. And if there's an empty chair there, there'll be an empty chair there. Governor Engler, Governor Blanchard, thank you. Governor Snyder, returning back to civility, how do people here do it?
Yeah, well, I think we've talked about what talk could be given, but success is the key. And I want to compliment all my predecessors for doing bipartisan things. But I'd like to cite one fact for you that I was proud of that I have to give a lot of credit to Dick Posthumus for, is in our 8 years in office, I had him keep track of how many bills had a supermajority of Democrats and Republicans in both chambers. We had a Republican majority, strong majorities in both chambers. So we could have done whatever we wanted to. But what percent of bills did we have that had a supermajority of both parties in both chambers? It was 90%. And that proves you can listen to one another, you can win to do one another, and that's the kind of message we got to get out instead of people talking about the few bills that weren't with supermajorities. Let's talk about the successes that we've had and how we can do it again.
Thank you. Governor Granholm, returning back to civility.
Yeah, I just think that we thank God for all the boomers up on the stage and here, but we really have to focus on this next generation who are so discouraged and who find think Governor Engler noted this in another forum, that young people don't see heroes in serving. And I think young people have to be encouraged that they are the heroes, that they have the tools to build a better world that they're so cynical about. And it's difficult, to be honest, when our president doesn't model the behaviors that we've described here, and is in fact to many the antithesis of truthful communication and of humility. But if we can model them and young people can model them, to become the change that we wish to see in the world, as Gandhi said, I think that a candidate who campaigns on basic issues and models these traits is going to be a balm for our raging souls. People are so exhausted. They're so tired of division. And since we all love this country, we should be encouraging people to run for office who model patriotism through civility. And civility, by the way, does not mean weakness, and it doesn't mean sentimentality. Civility can be strong. We have to create a culture that says, we will not tolerate hate. We will not disparage our fellow Michiganders. We will take care of one another. It's not weakness to be honest and humble and to respect each other and to love our neighbor as ourselves. In fact, I think those traits are stronger and more heroic than any sniveling vitriol from the internet swamps. So I hope we can model and raise and encourage that kind of heroism.
And we are just an hour and a half away from where Rosa Parks lived most of her life and died. And I think she quietly and with great civility stood up and sat down and stood up again for good reason, for the sake of what's right. And I got to tell you, I'll leave you with this. We have a responsibility. I will admit that right here. The media has a tremendous responsibility. I learned from my wife. My wife is a mental health therapist who's from New Orleans. She's a Spitfire. And she literally said, we got to stop vilifying everybody else as the other and realize that you are me and I am you. And what that means in therapy world is when a couple is fighting with one another, Julie's job is to figure out how to find common ground and how to make sure you don't make the other the enemy. And if we can do that in a grander scale than just couples and relationships, man, we could have better neighbors, couldn't we? We could do it with Oakland University's help and with all the great organizations here. The 5 major principles I leave you with, the 5 core principles: presuming goodwill, a desire to understand; showing and sharing respect, no personal attacks; leading with humility, knowing that others have something to offer; listening with openness, setting aside preconceived notions. Don't tell someone to go back to where they came from. That's number 4. Number 5, communicate clearly and respectfully and truthfully. And I think we all have it in us to do it. I got to say, I've learned a lot here today. I want to thank Governor Granholm, Governor Snyder, Governor Blanchard, and Governor Engler. Put your hands together for each and every one of them. Please stand up. And now, here's Joe Lehman with the Mackinac Conference for Public Policy to wrap things up here today.
I'm not a boomer, I'm a war baby.
Yeah. And you're up.
Well, that's great because it looks just like a standing ovation for me. Thanks, Roop. Thank you, governors. Yesterday, my dad took his last breath. It was important for me to be here. It was important personally. That's how much we believe in these principles at the Mackinac Center. My mom, my brothers, the whole family were there with Dad. And so we've all been through things like this. Now comes time of remembrance. There will be stories. But mainly what people will remember about my dad was how he made them feel. And that's not because Dad was some towering exemplar of charisma of any kind. It's because we remember how people make us feel because of the way we're built. However someone makes us feel, that's what we remember most, no matter what it is. And so it's fair to say that my dad was civil in ordinary ways in an extraordinary amount of the time. He was fair, generous. He let bygones be bygones. He acted as if everyone he dealt with was somebody whose help he would probably need in the future. And Dad detested politics, so naturally I ended up at the Mackinac Center. And I'm better off having been associated with each of these former governors over the years, even though we've all disagreed back and forth, all of us, and with all of them in public. But yet here we are today. And we can work with just about anyone if we stick to two things. And these are kind of an echo of the principles Roop mentioned. Presumption of goodwill goes a long way. It just simply means where you start with somebody is assuming that they want a lot of the same stuff you want, or at the very least, they don't mean to destroy you. And the second thing is expect conflict. You know, we're not children, we're adults, and this is politics, not beanbag. Expect conflicts, but channel it in a productive way. Politics means you don't get all you want. And even those rare times it seems like you do, you won't have it for forever. Now, free speech is the area where we show commitment to these ideals. And if we want durable social change, it has to be undergirded by something other than blunt force. Jim Leach was a Republican congressman who eventually switched parties, and he said about civility, civility is not about dousing strongly held views. It's about respecting other perspectives. And free speech is letting other people voice their perspectives. Free speech is to social progress as the scientific method is to scientific progress, material progress. You don't get one without the other. So if we want to get better, and as a society, if we want to live in relative peace with one another, if we want to acknowledge one another's basic human dignity, we need the kind of social progress free speech and civility promote. So I'd like you to join others who believe these things. I invite you to join the Michigan Civility Commission if you want to advance civility in the public square. You've got a QR code in front of you, and it is that easy to add your voice to the Michigan Civility Commission, Michigan Civility Coalition. You're here today, that's a great start. You know, we're at the biggest ticket in town today. That's this is a fantastic event. And as great as this event was, the state of Michigan can be great also. You know, we look at how Michigan, at the Mackinac Center, we look at how does Michigan rank in various ways. Michigan hasn't been ranked #1 in a lot of things for a long time, but there's no reason Michigan can't be known as the top-ranked state for civility in the public square if we join together to make it a priority. Thank you very much.